Hello friends, for today's video we're going to be going through some fantasy releases for the month of June, then we'll be getting into some recent big announcements, whether they be adaptations, book news, etc. And at the end we'll go ahead and be doing some shout outs specifically for an underhyped book, a good cause, and an artist. All relevant information will be linked in the description bar. There will also be timestamps in case you'd like to skip ahead or bounce around between any of the topics, but jumping straight into it, we'll go ahead and kick things off with the fantasy releases for the month. Going in order of projected release date, right on June 2nd, we have The Unicorn Hunters by Catherine Arden. Most of you are familiar with this author through The Bear and the Nightingale. There's a lot of their works that are more historical fantasy, and I do think she blends the two together extremely well. And in this particular story, we are looking at a reimagining of Anne of Brittany, a young duchess fighting to save her kingdom from French conquest by staging a unicorn hunt in an enchanted forest as a diversion for a secret marriage to France's enemy. Keeping with the retelling reimagining, next up we have The Secret World of Briar Rose. This is written by somebody a lot of you are very familiar with, Cindy, so I'll have her channel linked, and it is a queer Sleeping Beauty retelling that follows a cynical thief, Corin, as she enters the subconscious of the sleeping Princess Amelia to find her missing sister, Ellie, who saw a better life in the fairy tale. I am very excited about this next release, but I have already read an arc of it, so I'm excited because I read it and I thought it was good, and I'm glad it's finally coming out, and I think a lot of you are going to really like it, and that would be The Heart of the Naga. 3 handles 1. The world is divided by the line of limit. To the north are the Tokebi, fire people able to manipulate flames as both weapons and illusions. The Raycon, giant birdmen with immense strength, and the humans, as divided as the other races, are unified. To the south are the Naga, a reptilian people who relinquish their hearts for immortality. For centuries, the races didn't cross that line, but changes in the air. A Naga is being sent north, and a trio is being dispatched to make sure this agent from the south makes it out alive. One from each race. It is also, I'm not going to read the rest of the synopsis because I feel like the rest of the synopsis kind of gives some stuff away that if you just go into it, it's a little bit more exciting, but it is also actually already a known epic. It's just being translated for the first time into English, and I'm very excited for people to discover this one because I think a lot of you are going to really like it. It does feel like a lot of classic fantasy for obvious reasons. It was originally written at a different time, but also just that kind of quest feeling as well, and the emphasis on the different cultures, the people coming together from these different areas. There's a lot about it that I think a lot of you are going to really enjoy to be on repeat here. After that, we have This Immortal Heart by Jennifer Saint. Most of you are probably familiar with this author through their retellings, so we kind of have a resurgence of retellings this particular summer. This one is a retelling specifically of Aphrodite and Ares. I read an arc of this one and it didn't quite work for me, but if you like the idea of an Ares and Aphrodite retelling, then of course, definitely give this one a try. Projected for that same week, we have The Unmagical Life of Briar Jones. As far as I can tell, this is not a retelling or reimagining. It says it's a dark academia fantasy novel about a non-magical person who gets a job at an elite, rumored to be magical boarding school years after their childhood best friend was accepted and they weren't, only to find their friend has become a villain and the school hides dark secrets. From there, we have Songs of the Dead. I'm sure many of you are aware of this one. He is known for being very open about what he's putting out. He has his own channel. He's very dedicated to keeping his fans informed, but if you don't know anything about this one, it says it's a contemporary fantasy novel where we're looking at a deceased London musician, Jack Solomon, who discovers a hidden world beneath the city where magic is powered by light and music, and the dead are waging a revolution against the living. It's also the first in a trilogy. From there, we have a new Orbit release called The Tinderbox, and this one says it's a dark fantasy novel that reimagines, so another reimagining, a classic fairy tale following a wounded soldier named Mag Tresty, who finds a magical tinderbox from a dead demon, granting him wishes and intertwining his fate with a reclusive witch. Moving now to The Blood Weaver. This one says a device of magic, a shattered family, a brewing war. In a world where some can manipulate life with a single touch, siblings fight on rival sides, forced to reckon with the choices that led them there. Next up is one that this one might be one of the most innovative that I've heard of in a while, especially because while I do think a lot of the other books, despite being reimaginings and retellings, certainly sound as though they're either retelling works that don't get retold all that frequently, or even if they are retelling works that get told pretty frequently, it still feels like they're doing something really creative with them. So I by no means am trying to imply that all the rest don't have an air of uniqueness to them, but this one really takes the cake. It is by Adrian Tchaikovsky. I've only read one thing by Adrian Tchaikovsky, and I need to read way more. If you have recommendations for which are your favorites or which do you feel like are really good ones. The one I read was a standalone, and I just didn't really, it was Guns of the Dawn. It didn't really work for me, but I have wanted to read Children of Time. That's the one that I probably would lean toward starting with, but the synopsis of this one, I'm like, maybe it needs to be this. So the book is Green City Wars. Tell me this doesn't sound fantastic. It says it's featuring animal characters in a future world where genetically enhanced little helpers serve humans in solar-powered cities operating in the shadows. The story follows a raccoon as he searches for a missing mouse scientist, navigating a complex underworld of animal politics, crime, and conflict, all while trying to prevent the mouse from breaking the cardinal rule of not bothering humans. Redwall, but noir. And I've also never read Redwall, but it would be kind of fun to read this and then read Redwall and maybe read those around the same time. Either way, what a fantastic premise. I think that's the one I don't know, I'm like, am I the most excited about that release? It just sounds so good. Last for our releases for this month, there are, of course, many others that are going to be released in June, so if there's any that I missed that you want to mention, feel free, of course, to do that. But this last one is The River She Became. It's a fantasy novel about a scholar-turned-thief, Yasima, who crosses into the Fey world to find a relic to save her people from colonizers, forming a dangerous alliance with a rebellion Fey captain, as they both seek the same ancient artifact, leading to a forbidden romance amidst political intrigue, monsters, and ancient curses. If any of these sound great, I will have pre-order links, also their projected release dates. Sometimes there are slightly different dates depending on if you're in the US or the UK, so just be mindful that I am listing what are projected for US dates, but it looks like a lot of these will be released very, very soon. And also, which of the ones that I mentioned are you most looking forward to? All that aside, let's go ahead and jump into some recent book announcements, adaptation news, anime, manga, video games, all of that. Kicking things off with adaptations, there actually are some notable fantasy authors who have announced recently that there are adaptations in the works. First off, we have The Bridge Kingdom by Danielle Jensen, and this is projected to get a movie. I actually think of a fantasy novel getting a film, this one makes a great deal of sense, because most of the time, many of us have articulated a frustration with the unwillingness to at least consider animation for fantasy. Animation is fantastic for representing magic, and oftentimes when we get live action, it just misses the mark. If you're not going to consider having it be animated, you do need the absolute best of the best, or at least the most innovative and creative means of displaying magic, because it can look pretty bad pretty quickly, and it can really take people out of the story. And the idea that you wouldn't just go to animation is irritating, because it continues to create this idea that option one should be live action, or that we should take live action more seriously. And I am so grateful that this mindset is, for the most part, I think, dying away. However, the question first and foremost should always be, what would work best for this story? So it's not that it always needs to be animation, it's just, is animation the better route? And it's frustrating for a lot of us when it feels like they're not even asking that question, because they're just going in favor of this old-fashioned view that live action inevitably is better. All that said, the reason I'm bringing it up is that the idea of a live-action film for the Bridge Kingdom actually does feel like they asked that question and determined it makes the most sense to be live action. The reason being, there's not really magic in the Bridge Kingdom series, and it is very character focused, so you just find a fantastic area to shoot, and you don't have to worry about there being magic on top of everything. It's very intrigue heavy, it's very much a story of politics, and as a result, I think a live action film makes perfect sense. Then we have Kindred's Curse. It was announced is likely going to be getting a television show. There isn't a whole lot when it comes to details for this just yet, but if you are a fan of the story, you have that to look forward to, or at least you can have your fingers crossed, because just because something gets announced doesn't always mean it ends up actually becoming a reality. But as of right now, it would seem that one is slated for a television show. We also just recently got news that Sanderson's Skyward series is going to be adapted into a TV series with the same producers as One Piece Tomorrow Studios. Sanderson himself will write the pilot script with the TV writer-producers Jed Whedon and Maurissa Tancherone, who worked on Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. A form of an adaptation, not exactly, but something I think will be of interest to a fair amount of you. The Apothecary Diaries light novels. If you don't know, Apothecary Diaries was originally actually a web novel that got turned into light novels that then got turned into both two versions of a manga and an anime. So it has a long history of being reshaped, and also then it's been translated, not particularly well, but it's been translated so that you can read the light novels. It's got a lot of backstory. It's not fantasy, it is historical fiction, but I greatly enjoy the series. If you've never checked out light novels, though, they're not the easiest to get into because there really isn't a one-to-one comparison for anything a lot of us are familiar with. So if you go into it, you just kind of have to treat it as an entirely different medium. Regardless, though, the Apothecary Diaries light novels, it was announced, are getting an audiobook, or audiobooks, plural. I think this is both a great thing, and also I'm a little worried because I would have liked if they had maybe if they had retranslated them first and then gone back and done audiobooks for them. I'm hopeful some of the kinks will get ironed out through some great vocal performances in the light novels. Also, the reason it's a great thing is because audiobooks make stories far more accessible to a lot of people. So for that reason, I am happy that they're getting those and that more people find them. But again, it's just such a different medium. And I'm glad that the audiobooks will exist, but I think it'll further for people that they're meant to compare it to what they're accustomed to with regular novels. And again, light novels are very different. So I'm very glad, but I do wish maybe we had retranslated them just because I think maybe they could have used a little bit of that polish. But I do love Apothecary Diaries very much. I have read all the light novels that are out. I do enjoy them as well. So if you have wanted to check them out, but audiobooks are just a better option for you than physical, now you may possibly finally have the opportunity to check them out. Now on to officially some book news. Illuma Crate specifically has 2 editions that I think are going to be of interest to a lot of you. One of them would be The Everlasting by Alex E. Harrow. It looks like an absolutely beautiful edition. Also, we have The Live Ship Traders, which is I think the one a lot of you are going to be very excited about. So of course a lot of people were excited about Farseer when they did that trilogy, and it's great to see that they're continuing on with Realm of the Elderlings. So if you're a Robin Hobb fan or Realm of the Elderlings fan, I'm sure this is a glorious day for all of you if you didn't see the news already. And they do look absolutely beautiful. The artist who's been working on these, I can tell you, this artist is not only an amazing artist, but they are unbelievably professional, first off, and second, I can't believe how fast they work. Not that speed is everything, but I don't understand. It's inhuman how well they are able to take concepts and turn them into beautiful masterpieces. We also had FairyLoot announce their edition of Blood Over Bright Haven, and it's a different direction than we've seen for this cover before. Of course, this was originally self-published, and there were a couple of different covers when it was originally self-published. There's the gorgeous Broken Binding edition. The artwork on this is incredible. The edition overall and how it's put together is fantastic. But many of us are huge fans of this story, and it's great to see it getting new life breathed into it through new art, and once again just emphasizing that artists are absolutely amazing, and that is the number one reason why I continue to get excited about special editions. And then as far as an announcement for a sequel that I think a lot of you are going to have be of interest, we have the sequel to The Raven Scholar. This one will be titled The Fox in Winter. The downside for if you are a fan of this is it's projected to be released next year in 2027, so it's not coming anytime soon, but that's not too long to wait, given how long it can take to write a book. So you don't have to wait too long, but not happening this year. Now moving into our features, an underhyped book, an artist, and a good cause. For our underhyped book this month, I wanted to mention Arrows of the Queen by Mercedes Lackey. In a lot of ways, Lackey is like Hobb before Hobb, and with the news about the upcoming editions of Live Ship Traders, I figured this would be a good time to do an if you like this, try that style of recommendation. In the trilogy, we follow Talia, a young girl who leaves an abusive home and becomes a herald, people who serve Valdemar and bond with horses. Over the course of the trilogy, she grows from a child into a young woman, battling the trauma of her past and present, all while discovering her new role as a servant to the realm. The artist I'd like to shout out this week is Johan Lossel. Their art is unbelievably gorgeous. They have such a strategic use of black and white versus color. It's striking and hauntingly beautiful. Truly some of the most unique and stunning fantasy art I have ever seen. And if you'd like to support them, you can follow them on Instagram, become a patron, buy some of their art prints, or you can buy their art book. And as for our good cause this month, I'd like to shout out Rainbow Railroad. It's an international human rights organization that creates pathways to safety for at-risk and forcibly displaced members of the queer community with a commitment to being refugee-led. If you'd like to support them, they'll be linked in our pinned comment. That's it for our releases for the month, our announcements, and our shout-outs. If you have anything you'd like to add, any releases I didn't mention, or if you just like to hype anything up or mention any big news, feel free to do so. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you later. Bye.